I am once again reiterating the $1 trillion market cap price target for NIO that implies a new stock price of 612. So let's just round that up to $650 a share. You're thinking, what the hell am I talking about? Stick with me, all right? Because you ain't know what you ain't know. But first, let me preface this by saying, yes, NIO stock might go down even further. And yes, before you think I'm absolutely nuts, who warned you guys at 60, all right? At $60 a share, when NIO stock was sky high, everybody was like, 200, 300 next year, 400 next year. Who was it that warned you guys that 20 was going to happen? I did. All right. I got so much hate. Everybody saying, oh my God, this guy so retarded. When NIO stock was at 25 per share, who warned you guys that we were going to go down to 15? I did. When NIO stock was down at 13, who was it that warned you guys that 8 was going to happen? I got so much hate for it. Hell, I want NIO stock price to be 600 tomorrow if I had that power, but I ain't got that power, all right? And you know, I don't bullshit you guys. I'm not like the Indian Jim Cramer out there telling you this, telling you that. I give you guys the unfiltered truth, the good and the bad, all right? Having that all out of the way, how the hell are we going to get to 612 a share, rounded up $650 per share? Well, let me tell you a story, all right? You'll understand everything once you hear the end of the story. So yesterday, I talked to a couple of drivers who were just nearby, and these were gasoline vehicle drivers. And I asked them, are you planning to switch to an EV? And their simple answer was, no, I'm actually planning to switch to an EREV. Why is that? Why not go for traditional EV? Well, they said when you're on the job and you gotta go somewhere, you might not have the time to charge, and also the mileage that they display might be inaccurate, and it's a huge inconvenience. And I told him, well, with an ERV, you still gotta go charge sometimes. And he simply said, actually, no. Most of the time, we'll just be driving it like a gasoline car, and he's buying it for the reduced gas mileage and cheaper price. And I asked him, why don't you buy a car with battery swap? And this is where everything makes sense. It is too expensive. There aren't any cars that are mass market that can do battery swap. So whilst a lot of people might want battery swap or might like battery swap, with the limited amount of people that do know about battery swap, they may not be able to afford such a car. Remember, NIO has so many swap stations, but it's basically still only for the middle class or upper middle class, higher class people that can fork out $300K for a vehicle, R&B, all right? So this is where NIO's strategy comes in. Right now, everybody's preferring to have a generator inside the car instead of having a larger battery and be able to go battery swap, simply because of the fact that it's quite inaccessible for a lot of people, okay? And there's still the stigma that EV is inconvenient. But as the sub-brand rolls out, and the sub-brand itself was targeting between 200K and 300K range in price range, the Alps sub-brand, rumored to be called Envo, capable of battery swapping, and then the Firefly sub-brand, targeting between 100K RMB to 200K RMB, and also possibly capable of battery swap. Then you have the full spectrum of all price levels of vehicles that can do battery swap. So there's no excuse that car is too expensive and I can't afford it, so I'm buying a cheaper car that has a generator inside of it. That excuse would be invalid by then. And this is how NIO is going to go from just selling 160,000 cars per year, potentially to selling 500,000 and more cars per year, and even up to 1 million cars per year. Because when the sub-brand and the sub-brand all rolls out, and you have all these partnership swap stations everywhere, then you essentially have the gasoline equivalent of EVs. It is just as convenient as gas stations, and you do not have to have a generator inside your car by then. And that is when NIO is going to be selling a heck of a lot of cars. People are going to be buying the sub-brand cars just for the battery swap capability. Just like sort of like how I bought my EC6 just for battery swap, basically. To be honest, all right? That was the main purchase reason for a lot of NIO owners. But for the people that can't afford a NIO, then they can buy the sub-brand. Or if their budget is much lower, they can afford the sub-brand. There's definitely going to be a vehicle for every budget that can do battery swap under NIO's umbrella. There's no more excuse that it's too expensive. And they can do battery swap just like how gasolines can pump gas at the station. And that is when everything is going to be flipped upside down. You see, the argument we're using right now for a lot of NIO owners is that why would we want to carry a generator inside the car when sometimes we're not even using it? Obviously, the biggest reason battery swap isn't as massively available as gas stations, and the knowledge of battery swap just isn't there yet. In the future, you might even see NIO's sub-brand cars or sub-brand cars that can't even charge, just battery swap. Like my car, I can charge, but I haven't charged in almost 2 years. Just battery swap. But by then, you'll see how every single car that can do battery swap is pretty much associated with NIO or partnered up with NIO. These partnership companies are also realizing the fact that in the future, charging was one thing, but swapping is going to be much more mainstream because of convenience. Convenience is a big reason. Technology progresses based on convenience. Before, you had to use a big telephone that was very inconvenient. Now, all the phones are super convenient. So what we're looking at in the future are cars down from the 100k RMB all the way up to 800k RMB plus, all under NIO's umbrella, capable of doing battery swap. Imagine if the gas pump can be only used by one company. How crazy would that be? That company, that one company that sells cars from the cheapest to the most expensive, that's going to be huge. Now, NIO's situation is very similar. Of course, they're letting some of the other partners also use their gas pump, aka battery swap. But you get the picture. Right now, all automobiles, the preferred way of getting range is still at the gas pump for gas vehicles, obviously, right? There's more gas vehicles. And then second to that is charging. And of course, EREVs slide in between those two and take advantage of the fact that there's still so many gas pumps out there, so they're able to sell well. And of course, battery swapping is at third place out of all three. But NIO and their partners are working very hard to make battery swap a lot more mainstream. And in the future, maybe it might even be even more preferred than charging, just like how within the NIO base, all right, NIO owners, all the NIO owners, battery swapping is the most preferred choice to get power. Something like 90%, all right, swap on a regular basis over charging. So of course, now the big question, when is this going to happen? It's going to take a long time, all right? It's nothing that's going to happen overnight just like that. No, people aren't just going to wake up and say, oh, battery swap is here. I didn't know about it yesterday. I know about it today. Ain't going to happen, all right? You need at least 7 to 10 years, all right? 7 to 10 years for battery swap to be validified by the public. It is already validified within the NIO community, right? But it needs to be validified by the public with, of course, the sub-brand and the sub-brand all out and a ton of swap stations, all right? Just a ton of swap stations. I think 7 to 10 years later, we're probably going to be at like maybe 10,000 or 15,000 swap stations. That still might not be enough. Maybe 20,000 swap stations. That's going to be much more comparable to maybe a portion of what gas stations are like. But that will offer the relative convenience to everybody, all right? So yes, I firmly believe that NIO will go to 650. It's going to take a while, 7 to 10 years. The stock might drop further. Actually, it will drop further, all right? But you got to see where we're going here. The alternative to the gas pump isn't charging. The alternative to the gas pump is battery swapping, just like what Neil deGrasse Tyson said. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, just my personal opinion and what I'm gunning for. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.